Hi there, and welcome back to Cyberverse, a podcast about science, popular culture, and entertainment. We are your hosts, Ella
and Isabel, two science communicators and sci-fi nerds steering this spaceship into the multiverse of science fun. Today's episode, Cyberfeminism.
Oh my goodness.
We're going to be talking about cyborgs. We're going to be talking about technology, Donna Haraway.
Yes.
A bit of Black Mirror.
Oh my goodness.
And if none of that means anything to you yet, you're in for a treat because things are about to get radical.
Absolutely radical. Let's go. But as always, we are going to start by jumping into some recommendations for the week. And before that, it's really important that we acknowledge that this episode of Cyburst is being recorded on Ngunnawal and Ngambri country. Indigenous Australians are the first scientists and also the first artists, and we'd like to pay our respects to elders past, present, emerging, and future. So Culture Snap, Isabel, what do you bring for us to enjoy today?
Yes, on theme today.
Love.
Our feminism theme. I'm reading a book called Invisible Women by Caroline Criado Perez, who's a British feminist author. Have you heard of this book, Ella?
I have heard a lot about this book, and honestly, if you've got a copy, I might borrow it after you.
Ooh. So basically, it explores the adverse effects on women caused by gender bias in big data collection. Women are missing from a lot of data because men are unconsciously treated as the default human.
Don't love that.
Which then causes women to be a minority when we're not a minority because we make up half the population. So, and I'll give an example of where this happens. Transport design.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mainly men in decision-making rooms.
Why?
Which means public transport routes end up getting designed for typical male patterns of behavior. And that is usually going from point A to point B. Whereas women, in fact, have to go from point A to C to D to B to back to A because of things like childcare pickup, things like groceries.
All the other things that women pick up in our society.
All the other things. And the best part is men are even unlikely to use the public transport because they're the ones who tend to have access to a car.
When you say best part, I feel like you mean worst part.
It is also the worst part, yes. But yeah, it's just, oh my gosh, this book is so eye-opening.
In a good way? In an interesting way, but not a positive way.
It uncovers all the biases people have.
I'm guessing
which is the first step.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a lot. And you slowly realize reading it, you're like, wow, a lot of the world is really not designed for me.
Damn. That is so relevant to today's topic, though.
Yeah.
I kind of want to dive into that.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, but Ella's got something a little more positive to talk about. So what's your culture snap?
I do. My culture snap is I've done books like the last two, so I was like, what is so different to a book? And I've been thinking about this. My culture snap, my recommendation for all of you is to buy some flowers for your friend or collect some flowers for a friend.
Oh, cute.
I just want to recommend this week or month radical empathy and kindness, and you should always practice reckless optimism where you can.
What is reckless optimism?
Reckless optimism is just like, allowing yourself to experience the best even when the situation isn't set up for you to succeed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I just think it'd be super nice to show a friend that you love and that you care and you appreciate them in your life. It doesn't have to be cut flowers at like a flower market. It could be some from your backyard or a little walk you went on, making sure to leave plenty for local pollinators behind. It could be like flower plants from like a local plant shop, or seeds, or even a card with like those little seeds in the paper.
Yes.
And I just think this is a really nice opportunity to honor particularly the women or non-binary folk in your life, And I also thought like today is like a pretty cool time to talk about it because flowers are often associated with femininity. And how nice just to give a little bouquet to someone because you're full of love for the people in your life.
Wonderful, wonderful recommendation.
Yeah. I feel so positive about the world. This is where I am at right now. Very opposites to the book you've been reading. I'm just like,
yeah.
Yeah.
No, that was a good balance we had there, I think.
I think so. But I would like to jump into cyberfeminism. And what Isabel has pointed out is actually our first.
It is indeed our first technology-focused episode.
Getting to the T in STEM. Let's go.
Yes. It's a part of STEM that it's often sort of
Missed out.
Unintentionally, I think.
I feel like so often we're like, oh, science includes mathematics, and then we think STEM, and we go, oh, of course, engineering. But I think technology,
because we have had science. We have had science episodes. We have had, we've talked about engineering
in the farming.
Yeah, and we have also talked about maths in our multiverse episode.
Yeah, so technology. I'm so sorry, baby, but we're here for you now. Don't worry.
Yeah. Okay. Cyberfeminism.
Tell me.
This is some exciting stuff. Let's talk about what this is.
Yes, please.
So, the phrase was coined in the early 1990s, but it's a thing that has been around for longer, just not defined. And it has many definitions. It means different things to different communities. Some people have even described it as an alliance that defies boundaries of identity and definition, which makes it truly postmodern.
Yes, lots of postmodernism in today's discussions, I think.
But the dominant perspective today describes cyberfeminism as a utopian view of cyberspace and the internet as a means of freedom from social constructs such as gender, sex difference, and race.
Wow. That is a lot and very interesting and exciting. And if this is your first time hearing the phrase, don't worry, we're going to unpack it for you. We're not just going to leave you there.
No, that was just the beginning.
So can you talk about like a few categories within this? Maybe to give some context.
So it sees technology as a means to link the body with machines, breaking down binaries and oppositional structures, and particularly interested in the impact of new technologies on the lives of women, and the gendering of technoculture in everyday life, because technology is traditionally viewed as a masculine thing. And so, a big part of it is also encouraging women to consume these technologies and actively participate in their making.
Yes, let's get more women in the design rooms, please.
Yeah, exactly. Ultimately, looking at the entanglement of new technologies with power structures and systemic oppression. So this is asking questions like, can we use technology to hack the codes of patriarchy?
Cyberfeminism is here.
Yeah.
And she's beautiful and she's loud and she's here to stay, I think.
Yes. I love this so much.
Okay, so like what like media talks about cyberfeminism?
One who comes up a lot is Octavia Butler, who people may have heard of before. She's an African American sci-fi writer. An example of her cyberfeminism texts is her Xenogenesis trilogy from the late 80s, which is set in a post-apocalyptic future ruled by gene-trading aliens.
So fun.
Yes. And the really interesting thing about it is that it broke conservative ideas of race and biology by describing aliens that were neither male or female but a third sex, and who practiced interspecies breeding.
Which is super interesting because like the definition of species, depending on who you talk to, because there are lots of definitions of species, means that species are distinct because they can't breed with each other. So the fact that we've got interspecies breeding going on is breaking that binary of differences, which is something that I think we see again and again in cyberfeminism.
Yeah,
absolutely. And there are so many examples of media with feminist cyborgs or cyberfeminism representations in them. A few that come to mind for me are Kingsman, the first movie, where you've got that really like sick, badass assassin who has kind of like knife legs, and she's, you know, all at once human and machine, and like gentle but, you know, really cutting and sharp, which is really cool. Another one that I think of a lot is Humans, which has Gemma Chan in it, and it's all about androids, what it means to be human, memories, etc., etc.
Yeah. Then we've got media like Ghost in the Shell, Ex Machina, Westworld, all like android type ones. The thing about those ones is that they tend to be sexualized, the female characters, and emphasize that technology is designed to fulfill men's desires.
And like fantasies.
Well, yeah, because the AI is placed in a female body to create a more perfect woman.
As if such a thing could exist.
Yeah.
Every woman is perfect.
So yeah, productive patriarchal imaginations, not the figures of true cyberfeminism.
No, but something along the lines, like something along the way.
Yeah, yeah.
Because cyberfeminism is, as you said in that first definition, utopian.
Yes.
And a lot of these are kind of going more along like dystopian to eventual utopian and kind of like plot arcs and resolutions.
Exactly. And I wanted to talk about this quote from a gender studies honours thesis.
Oh, please do.
That investigated these texts. And they said that as soon as the machine came to be perceived as a demonic, inexplicable threat and as harbinger of chaos and destruction, writers began to imagine the android as female. So this is playing with the idea of combining two of the scariest and most uncontrollable things to heterosexual men, which is women and technology. I do want to point out, though, that movies like Ex Machina are a little more complex, and there's a really interesting exploration of power dynamics happening between the male and female in that movie, but I don't want to spoil it or say anything else, so please go watch that movie and you'll see what I mean.
It's very important to me that you know, listeners, that Isabel has a winky face at the end of that sentence in our script. If that doesn't, you know, intrigue you to go and watch Ex Machina, I don't know what will.
It's also an Alex Garland movie, and Alex Garland is top tier, so...
Talking about top tier, other examples of cyberfeminism in media that I wanted to talk to is in art. And I feel like we haven't actually spoken a lot about art other than like in games or like as literature or as film, but works of art that can only be classified kind of in that body.
Right.
There are two artists who I want to point out here who work a lot in the cyberfeminist, body hacking, body modification, cyborg space. The first is this artist called Orlan. Her name is always in all caps, which I think is really fun. And she works a lot, in the body modification, body hacking, becoming a cyborg ? Space.
Ooh.
She's really cool. I wrote a whole essay on her in an art history class on posthumanism.
Oh, cool.
That I did, which I loved. One of her pieces of art is like a artificial but then physical replica of the artist Orlan. And it's a robot with like different AIs in it. And it has like a text generator that reads in her voice and also a movements generator. So it's like physically moving through space. And it's called the Orlandoid. It's really cool. And the robot's kind of like half constructed so you can like see its insides. And it's kind of like she does a lot of performance pieces. And this one is, you know, to be about issues of the individual and also like group, kind of like preconceptions of identity, which I think is super relevant to our discussions today. She's also done some really interesting things like having live cosmetic surgeries as a piece of performance art, as a woman, as an artist, as a person. Which can be described as body hacking, which is kind of like in a similar space of posthumanism, cyborgism.
Yeah.
The other artist who I wanted to talk about is Nina Sellers, who worked a lot with Stellac, who was another artist that I focused on in that course.
Is that the ear person? Person with
Yeah.
the ear and the, yeah.
So Stellac is a male artist who one of his works of art was transplanting an ear onto his arm. So he had 3 ears on his body at that point. Nina Sellers was actually the artist who photographed his ear surgery as her own work of art. I've got a quote from her here about her art practice, and she says, "It focuses on human anatomy and its symbiotic history with arts and technology. Utilizing the mediums of drawing, photography, and new media, I explore through my artwork the internal architecture and perceptual awareness and abilities of the acculturated body as embedded in the world and mediated by technology."
Ooh.
The idea of our bodies as mediated by technology is so powerful.
Yeah.
Such a staple of cyberfeminism.
So cyberfeminist.
I love it. And she has another piece of art that I just want to talk about briefly that's kind of like based on the creation of Adam. And it's kind of like these half-generated people, one of which is a woman, there's a man and a child. And they're like half there, half, kind of in cyberspace, you could say. And it brings up questions of what does it say to be humans created only humans partially? Is the rest for us to dictate? Has it been predetermined?
Yeah.
And what does this mean about becoming post-human and becoming a cyborg?
Wow.
So super, super interesting in this space. And I didn't know that like doing that course a few years later, he would be in a podcast talking about International Women's Day, but here we are.
Here we are. I have another artist group I want to talk about.
Yes, please do.
An Australian example, actually. We love to bring in Australian examples.
Absolutely,
Sometimes it's
do.
really difficult for us to do. Because America tends to dominate media.
For now.
Anyway, they're called VNS Matrix, and they're a South Australian feminist artist collective from the 1990s, and actually among the first artists to use the word cyberfeminist to describe their works.
Get it.
I love that it was Australians, So they were primarily concerned with women's role in technology and art, particularly the gender dominance and control of new technologies and the construction of social space, identity, and sexuality in cyberspace.
I mean, I'm interested in all these things too. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, so they created a computer game art installation called All New Gen, which is hilarious.
Why?
And in their words, radically transgressive interactive computer game for non-specific genders. And okay, here's the thing about it. I can't say much because it gets a little bit sexual. And this is a clean podcast.
You can't just drop that in there and walk away from it, Isabel.
But I encourage everybody to look it up. But here's one of the lines from it. This is a zone where gender is a shuffleable 6-letter word and power is no longer centered in a specific organization. Also, the first question asked of players of the game is, what is your gender? And you get 3 options, male, female, or neither. And neither is the correct answer because clicking the male or female icon sends players spinning in a loop that takes them out of the game.
Super interesting.
Yeah, I think they're playing with some really interesting concepts there.
It's also like neither is the correct answer, but it's also like neither is the only answer that allows you to progress.
Yes.
That is an interesting idea. I like that a lot.
Yeah. And here is one of the best parts as well. In 1991, they wrote a cyberfeminist manifesto for the 21st century, which was inspired by, guess what, Ella?
Is it Donna Haraway?
Yes.
Oh, I love Donna Haraway.
By Donna Haraway's Cyborg manifesto. And that is the text of cyberfeminist.
The text, the foundational, the cyberfeminist Bible, if you will.
Foundational catalyst of cyberfeminism.
Oh my goodness.
So let's talk about a cyborg manifesto, Ella.
I'm so excited to hear this from you, Isabel, because I've read this a few times throughout my studies, and I was super excited to circle back around to it. But I love all the things you've taken from it, so I'd love if you could explain to me and also our lovely audience all about the Cyborg Manifesto.
Absolutely. So it was an essay written by American feminist and prominent science and technology studies scholar Donna Haraway.
Queen.
Published in 1985. And what she does in the essay is use the figure of the cyborg to urge feminists to move beyond the limitations of traditional gender feminism and politics. And Haraway's cyborg became the cyberfeminists' I want to say ideal citizen for a post-patriarchal world, and a major milestone in development of feminist post-humanist theory. So in her manifesto, she says that feminist cyborg stories, and these can be fiction or non-fiction, have the task of recoding communication and intelligence to subvert command and control. In other words, subvert patriarchal structures and traditional gender roles.
What a task.
Yeah, yes. So I've used the word cyborg a bit there, and she uses it a bit. So what do we mean by cyborg? That's an important thing for us.
Such
to
a good
define.
question.
Yeah, so she talks about it as a cybernetic organism, a hybrid of machine and organism, and a creature of social reality and a creature of fiction.
So it's all at once,
yes.
Socially real and not real at all.
Yes. Most importantly, the cyborg is a creature in a post-gender world. Yes. Where in removing the binaries, you create equality and get rid of the problem, the quote-unquote problem of gender.
Yes, this is getting rid of the binary of male-female dichotomy, black-white.
Exactly.
Nothing in between. These are rigid roles,
yes,
as we've discussed them and entrenched in society.
Exactly. The concept represents a rejection of rigid boundaries, particularly those separating human from animal and human from machine, and of course male from female. Free from trappings of gender, race, body, power.
Man, I want to be a cyborg in this world. This manifesto makes you want to be a cyborg so bad.
And something quite interesting about it, at least to me, is that it rejects the idea of purity or nature goddess as the perfect state for women. Because for Haraway, the cyborg metaphor challenges the popular feminist belief that women should want to return to a natural, perfect state. And instead, the cyborg figure is neutral and promotes universality.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's rejecting the idea of going back to this like Christian idea of like a Garden of Eden.
Yes,
because
exactly.
That's kind of from the idea of like we were perfect and now we're not.
Yeah.
And cyborg theory or cyborg manifesto suggests that cyborgs are kind of like born and continue to be, or like created and continue to be perfect. Like there isn't like a sin or a transgression or a problem, quote unquote.
Yeah, exactly. And the concept is a matter of gaining gender equality, not a matter of who can be more powerful than others, which I think is what a nature goddess implies by using the word goddess or god.
It's like going back to before when we had power.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I think therefore cyborg and her cyborg metaphor is actually truer to the principles of feminism,
which are rooted in equity.
Yep.
Yeah.
Coming back to what I said earlier.
Please do.
She argues that not only is contemporary sci-fi full of cyborgs, and we gave some examples earlier, but it's also reality.
What?
Yeah. So one example is modern medicine is full of cyborgs, of couplings between organism and machine. So it's not a far future thing. It's already happening.
So true.
And so the boundaries between sci-fi and reality in this sense are also an illusion.
Yeah, I guess so.
I think I just blew Ella's mind there.
Mind blown yet again. Thanks for talking through that as well. I think
good.
Cyborg Manifesto is such a foundational piece of writing
Absolutely.
in not only like this area, but also kind of in feminist and gender studies as a whole. And I feel like it's a piece of work that's only going to become more prominent as time goes by and as we approach, hopefully something a little bit more equal and equitable in terms of gender in the world that we live in, which is entrenched and mediated by technology, as we've kind of discussed.
And that manifesto sounds radical now. Think how radical that would have sounded in the 80s. People would have been like
Haraway, what? You're off your rocker. And now we're all here like, Haraway, be my best friend. You're so cool. Whoa. I want to take a moment to kind of like in light of all of that to chat a bit about intersectionality before we kind of go any further.
Yes.
And how this all becomes irrelevant in the best possible way with creation of this new category of humanity and identity. Due to all the areas of greyness provoked by Haraway, they get disassembled and thrown up into the air, and they're all up for discussion and recontextualization with this idea of the cyborg. And I wanted to connect this to kind of cyborg feminist representations, because in a world without the binary of gender, without racial discrimination, and so many other, things that start us off with inequality, intersectionality becomes irrelevant, and I feel like that would be such a nice world to live in.
Absolutely.
I also think it relates a lot to the aim of International Women's Day in 2023, which is today, the day we're releasing it. And the hashtag is #EmbraceEquity. And the theme here is to get the world talking about why equal opportunities aren't enough. And the reason why equal opportunities aren't enough is because we all come from very different starting places.
Yes.
Often due to intersectionalities that mean that even if we're both given the same opportunities to apply for like a PhD scholarship, one of us inherently has a lot more freedom and flexibility and systems in place supporting us to go for that and to get it. So the theme this year is to talk about true inclusion and how that and belonging requires equitable action. And I feel like in a postmodern, post-patriarchal, cyberfeminist world.
I was like, we are not in a post-patriarchal world.
No, but when we are there.
Which
hopefully is soon. Things like this will not even need to be discussed. Equity and equality are just going to be assumed.
Yeah.
They're not even going to be things to discuss because it's just going to be there and life's going to be so great.
It's going to be utopian. That's, what a breath of fresh air.
What a breath of fresh air.
It's so nice to think about, considering so many portrayals of the future at the moment are dystopian.
Yeah, I think this also comes in line with something that we teased in our very first episode, which is solar punk. I think a cyberfeminist future is also that of solar punk. And
yeah, I think it is, yes.
Yeah, beautiful reconciliation with our environment, natural and technology-wise, and co-harmony in that ecosystem, everything existing together.
Yep.
Not sacrificing one for the other, not nature being the goddess and technology being like evil, but
having a harmonious balance between everything.
Yeah. Oh, that makes me so positive. This is so good.
Ella, I see you've got a thought problem written here. Would you like to talk us through that?
Yeah, so this thought problem is kind of here to talk about and get everyone kind of thinking about ways in which we might already be cyborgs.
Oh.
Like that future we were talking about, that positivity, it's not actually that far away, I would like to suggest.
I'd like to hear that.
And I'm going to suggest it through this thought problem on memory. And this is something that I heard in a digital humanities class maybe 4 years ago, and it continues to blow my mind. So memory exists, right? It's stored in our brains. Without it, I would be very, very useless. But in this thought problem, say that I told you I know how to get to this really cool park.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in my head and I can take you there. And my best mate, Pete, he can also take you to this really cool park.
Yep.
But my best mate, Pete, he's got a few problems with memorizing routes. It just his memory. His memory structures and his brain don't allow for that. So he keeps a handy dandy notebook on him at all times with the steps of how to get to the park. So Pete knows, brain can't do these routes, but I know if I open my notebook, the routes there, I can get to the park. So in this example, we both know, quote unquote, how to get to the park.
Yep.
Because we can both access this information, me through my memory and Pete through his memory that tells him to look at his notebook.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens when I tell you this notebook isn't a notebook and, maybe it's something similar, kind of like your phone?
Ooh.
Is this phone, which you have your quote-unquote memory in, an extension of self in a way such that we are already cyborgs, that we are already integrated with technology?
I absolutely think so.
Yeah, so in this thought problem, we're kind of showing that everything we know and things that were traditionally kind of part of our organic system are also entrenched in our technological systems that are now entwined with our organic systems in a way such that we can't function without them, but we function best with them and we view them as something that is almost ourself and our extension of self.
Yeah, I mean, think about how you feel when you can't find your phone.
The absolute panic of when you've gone somewhere without it.
It is a freak out. Complete freak out.
Yeah, because so much of our life is on there and we rely on it for so many things. Not in a cyberfeminist world yet. So, like safety, communication, a whole bunch of things. And I do want to link this back to cyberfeminism.
Yes, please do.
Because I think stereotypical women's tasks, such as being the person who stays in contact with the family, like extended family, knowing what nuclear household events are occurring, keeping track of birthdays, all of these can be done really easily on the phone. And they used to be, kind of like up to like the mum of the household, the wife of the household. So in this way, we are gendering the technology of the phone as an extension of self through the phone. Like, not only is it us, but it is a gendered perception of us because it does the tasks that traditionally fall into the gender role of a woman.
Oh, this is so interesting to think about it in that way.
Yeah, and it's really more interesting going back to a thought you brought up earlier, which is traditionally women's use of and in technology is viewed as dystopic because we are culturally considered the guardians of nature, kind of like that goddess of nature figure.
And I just want to jump in here as well. And
go for it.
This is again from that gender studies thesis that I read. If humans and machines are constructed to be incompatible, women are then perceived to be even more incompatible with machines because the world of technology has always been the world of men, while women have been considered to be outside of technology and a part of nature.
Yeah, and I guess in these examples, it doesn't really fit into like this patriarchal society of keeping women down because technology is empowering. And technology can allow us to stay in contact with everyone we are expected to and also do more. Like, it's empowering us, it's making our lives easier, our roles easier. And identities of self easier because it helps us push past that expectation.
Love. I mean, if it's used in the right way. I think we're still not quite there, but
I think there are lots of ways in which it doesn't right now, but I think in the really, really near future, we could be there, which is so exciting.
Yeah, it is. Speaking of other exciting things,
Yes.
Let's talk about some Black Mirror
Okay.
episodes. Some very interesting Black Mirror episodes, actually.
You've persuaded me.
Yeah. Archangel, Ella.
Yeah, so this episode, Archangel, of Black Mirror, it has stayed with me, and not in like the most positive way, but in a really interesting way. So this episode features a bit of technology, a bit of body hacking, if you will, a bit of cyborgism that isn't really feminist. And it's this implant, kind of like chip in your head kind of thing, that allows you to see what others see. And also not only shows you what others see, but also gives you control to censor what this individual with a chip in their head sees.
Yep.
And distort reality. So there are themes of body hacking, of cyborg creation, but not of own choice, which I feel like is often represented in media. But in this version, it's like parental. So you've got this helicopter parenting going on, where this mum puts this chip in her young daughter's head, or gets the company to put it in her daughter's head so she can monitor her daughter's activities, make sure she's quote-unquote safe. And the really interesting thing here is questions of, does the technology actually make the daughter safer? So part of the technology being able to censor this, young child's vision is that it will visually distort. So the child is seeing visual information, the chip is saying, and then the perception is not getting to the brain, so it can't be processed. So it visually distorts any images of sex, drugs, violence, etc. And what this does is, obviously there's a breakdown of trust and relationship and causes rebellion in the daughter.
Yeah.
And it kind of like ends any idea of a trusting parental relationship or any relationship at all to this parent, because the parent is monitoring, is, saying what the child can and can't see. And this goes way up until, way throughout life until the child is, a young teenager, a young adult. And this episode is really kind of warning of this quote unquote protector role with technology. And in my view, it highlights that being and becoming a cyborg should be by choice, and that body hacking should only be completed with consent.
Yep.
So it's kind of like a transitionary cyborg tale.
Yeah.
But it's not positive because it's not empowered.
Yeah. Not positive, but important.
Yeah. So I think that's just a really interesting example of, a fictionalized version of how it could go wrong and how it can't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like almost selfish in the way it presents this technology being used, which, is kind of upsetting. But Black Mirror is kind of like that as a TV show. It's all about showing us technology, our relationship to it, and asking us to critically question its involvement, to what extent it's involved in our lives. Where should we challenge? Where should we, criticize, look further, look deeper before entrusting with our lives?
Yeah.
And in that vein, most Black Mirror episodes end really negatively.
Yes. Except for a handful.
Except for maybe 3. And the one that Isabel's about to talk to is maybe the most positive ending of any Black Mirror episode.
Yes. Yeah. San Junipero.
Love.
Is the episode. Season 3, episode 4. Set in a beach resort town named San Junipero, where 2 women meet and start a relationship. And this is introverted Yorkie and the more outgoing Kelly. And the town is, well, I'm going to spoil it a little bit. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. The town is part of a simulated reality that the elderly can inhabit, even after death. And here's a fun fact. The first script was about a mixed-sex couple and had an unhappy ending. But the final version was about a same-sex couple and had a happy ending, which is so rare to see.
So rare to see, first of all, female-female relationships in media. Yep. Even more rare for them to, not be killed off in a kill your gays kind of trope. So this is super exciting. I love this a lot.
Yes. So through its fusing of melodrama, which can be perceived as traditionally more of a women's genre, with science fiction traditionally perceived as a masculine genre.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. San Junipero offers a future technology-enabled world that escapes patriarchy to transcend gender.
Sounds kind of cyberfeminist, if you ask me.
Yeah. So there are a few scholars who have studied this episode and have argued it absolutely aligns with Donna Haraway's vision. And I agree with them.
Okay, tell me.
So when they're connected to the system, they have this little like chip thing they put on their head.
Mm-hmm.
The protagonists essentially become cyborgs. So Cyborg Kelly and Cyborg Yorkie, finding what Donna Haraway would call pleasure in the confusion of boundaries.
All about cyberfeminism.
Yeah. Confusion of boundaries regarding their sexuality and their sense of self.
Love.
And as the audience, we want them to be together and are compelled to embrace this cyborg world that allows Kelly's and Yorkie's identities to be fluid, transparent, and liberated.
Whoa!
Yeah.
That is so sick.
Isn't that great?
I think it kind of comes back to this, ultimate idea that is really positive about cyberfeminism.
Mm-hmm.
Because Donna Haraway says that becoming cyborgs is a way out from oppression of gender.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not just a faraway future thing.
Yep.
But it's also here in the now. And that technology is already allowing us to have sort of an out from traditional gender roles.
Mm-hmm.
And technology is already allowing us to work from home, breaking up caregiver duties, as we've seen a lot in COVID.
Yeah.
Breaking up household upkeep and kind of uniting women and others in discussions of what it means to have an equitable division of household labor to, kind of push back against traditional ideas and values through technology as like a mediator.
Yeah. If used in the right way.
If used in the right way.
I want to emphasize that point. Absolutely. Can be a means for women to enhance their ability and overcome oppression. Changes the woman from being helpless to empowered.
Yeah, equalizing the playing field and hopefully eventually making the playing field equitable too.
Yes.
Technology and becoming a cyborg, all of this kind of keeps us social and connected and in the loop. And in that systematic kind of view, very like, cybernetics kind of perspective.
Yeah, you sound very cybernetic.
Women are part of the system.
Yes.
And are part of the system for liberation of breaking through this gender oppression and of creating this utopian society. And it kind of even goes back to your culture snap today of when women are in the room designing it. That is how technology also enables us to move past these barriers.
Yep.
How exciting.
So exciting.
Oh my goodness, what an episode.
Oh, I love this episode.
I am so excited for the future and what technology could mean for our society. If used in the right way.
How many times are you going to say that in this episode?
But let's move to our individual sections.
Yeah. I want to talk about, so we've talked about cyberfeminism.
Sure have.
Let's talk about sonic cyberfeminism.
I'm assuming you don't mean the hedgehog.
No. That thought didn't even
Ding,
cross my mind when I was reading about this.
You should have seen Isabel's face, listeners. That was really priceless. I'm very proud of that joke. Thank you. Good night.
So sonic cyberfeminism is focused on exploring the relationship between sound technology and gender.
Okay.
And this is a more recent thing, emerging in the 2010s.
So kind of like 20, 30 years on.
Yeah, so there's quite a lot of like experimentation happening with it at the moment. And they're still sort of figuring out how to define it and what it means. And it's really interesting that this happened with the acoustic or sonic turn in academia, where people have suddenly realized the preference we give to visual and written modes of understanding the world, and that sound actually has so much to offer but keeps being overlooked. That links back to our data sonification episode, actually.
Did we do an episode on that?
Yeah, we
Goodness,
did.
we're cool.
And this is particularly interesting because sound has a traditional association with women.
Does it?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm. So, of course, it's been ignored all this time.
My goodness. You're really going to come out and say that? It's true.
Yeah. But, like, now it kind of makes sense as to why we've sort of not spent as much time on it as, like, written visual formats.
My goodness. And this also, like, in a very meta sense, again, comes back to podcasts.
Yes.
And the audio and the medium that we're currently listening to this episode on and recording it on. Oh my goodness, love it. Keep going. Yes.
Yes. So sonic cyberfeminism is also about the ability, confidence, and freedom to create sounds with sonic technologies that have previously been gendered as male or masculine. It's also about active listening beyond what's audible, and even paying attention to silences. And creating spacious types of sounds is also a really big theme.
Ooh.
And I've got an example that I would like to talk about.
Yes,
Please.
please.
I know you are going to love this example.
Okay.
Okay, so it's an audio piece titled In a Queer Time and Space.
I already love it by the title.
By Sherry Ostapovich. I hope I said that correctly. Which the artist has also written a critical reflection of themselves. And it's designed to be played on a 360 degrees ambisonic system. So not like a traditional speaker, like think of like 360.
So you're surrounded by speakers.
Yeah,
okay.
exactly. And this is a system that the artist views as a way to challenge gendered binaries and standardized setups.
Mm-hmm.
And what they do is use materials of recordings with members of London's LGBTI plus community, meditating on queer geographies, memories, acoustics, and the interrelation between architectural and socio-political space, all of which disrupts a cis-het white male dominance of audio engineering.
I do love this. You're so right. That's so cool.
I will send you the link to the audio so you can listen to it.
Thanks.
Sonic cyberfeminism. Let's get around it.
We should do an episode on that. This is way too interesting to just leave as like a little section at the end.
X-Men though, Ella. What do you have to say about X-Men and cyberfeminism?
What do I still have to say about X-Men that hasn't been said? Genuinely, so much. And it is surprising how easy it is to pull things out like this at the moment. I don't know. I feel like it's just coming naturally this state. It's really exciting. So X-Men has always been a story about understanding what it means to be human, about when we're human adjacent, and about how far we have to push our understandings of self and reconciling what we each believe to be true about our own perceived humanity, revisiting our perceptions of self and also in groups, so who else we also view to be human, equal, etc. In this same vein, X-Men, unlike Haraway's view of cyborgs, does not muddy the waters between perceptions of technology and human, of female and male, natural and unnatural. There is no assumed blending or like by bringing in this third category of mutants or cyborgs. Instead, X-Men uses the vehicle of superpowered mutants, pretty extraordinary, pretty out there, to kind of like use this supernatural view to bring to the forefront of discussion themes of identity amongst minority and intersectional groups, discussing things such as feminism, racism, and ableism through the lens of, if these people aren't people, how can you justify that?
Right.
So kind of like Haraway, the ideas are similar, but the outcomes are different.
Yes.
Haraway is talking about, you know, the binaries stopping existing because of this third category, and X-Men is like, this other category exists. Does that make these binaries more or less? And it's kind of bringing to question that through the vehicle of superpowers and mutants, which kind of makes it more, not acceptable to talk about, but it's like less scary to approach, I guess, for a lot of people, especially as it has often appealed to cis, white, heterosexual men, which I think is super interesting. It's kind of like they're sneaking in like this little bit of secretive stuff, secretive feminism. And there, in X-Men First Class specifically, there is this idea of society adapting to quote-unquote us. So us as the cyborgs, us as the mutants. And this is what Raven / Mystique, the most prominent and empowered female character, I'd say, in the series, has to say about this. And she says, we are different, but we shouldn't be trying to fit into society. Society should aspire to be more like us, mutant and proud. And I take that to be like, if we're viewing this in a cyborg lens, like society shouldn't be trying to fit us into male or female. They should want to be cyborgs. I am proud of who I am, which I love. Also in X-Men First Class, through Raven, this character, we see a validation of true beauty and self versus hiding what makes us stand out. So versus hiding the part of us that's a cyborg, a mutant, going beyond. There's kind of this moral story when it comes to Raven, who is in the clear, in the moral high ground, versus Hank, who's in the wrong. He's trying to like hide his mutation. She's learning to accept it and embrace it. And this is a swap from these Eve-like stories, inclusive of Pandora, where traditionally in mythology, the woman missteps.
Oh, that's such a good point.
It's so cool. And in this line of thinking, and in some others, X-Men First Class is a feminist work. And I think it's really cool how women are their own moral agents and become empowered through mutation, through standing up for others, through, trying to change society.
Amazing. Love.
And that's the note I'm ending it on. Whew.
Oh, wow.
Can you believe I pulled all that out of X-Men First Class? And I'm going to keep going throughout all our extra episodes about X-Men First Class somehow.
I don't think you're ever going to run out of things to talk about.
I kind of thought I would.
I don't think you will.
It's a Christmas miracle.
What a wonderful episode, Ella.
I'm genuinely really, really happy with this. And I knew going into it, like, this was an area that excited me, excited you a lot too. And I think I'm even more excited now we've done it.
Yes.
I love making these connections with you and kind of like jumping across and having this discussion and also sharing it with people.
Oh, yeah. It's amazing. So maybe let's talk about some questions.
Questions for our audience. Ruminate on this, dear listeners.
Yeah. So what are the cyberfeminist texts? Now that you know what cyberfeminism is, have you seen both fiction and non-fiction? Are you a cyberfeminist?
Have you always been a cyberfeminist without knowing?
And do you think we can achieve a post-gender world through technology and science?
I really hope so.
I hope so as well.
Happy International Women's Day for 2023.
Oh, yes.
Thanks for following us through this feminist, science, technology, cyborg-themed journey. Stay nerdy, everybody. And we will see you next time.
See you next time. Thank you to ANU CPAS for their support and access to their podcast studio.